Welcome. Hey guys, Mina here and welcome to posing tutorial video. Today we will learn how to pose your characters. First of all, you will need anatomy and proportions to be correct for your character, so I suggest clicking on these links to get the full lessons of my tutorials on female and male body. Number 2, you will need counterpose in your character's body. Counterpose is a pose which means that your character's shoulders and hips are tilted in different ways so that body looks more dynamic and alive. I marked it here with a red line. Number 3, you will need balance and foreshortening for extra effect. You can find different references and photos online in 3D, or you can watch photos of different poses for any type of pose you need. Or you can even take photos of your friends in different poses you specifically need for your project or drawing. I will leave the links in the description about all the useful references and websites with poses. Today I will draw 3 poses, one fighting, one distinguished one, and one energetic one, so that I can represent 3 different characters. And also these will be the poses for my next video, where I will transform all of these poses into Pokemon Go team leaders. Main thing is to count the heads in the body and have the correct body proportions as a base for your poses. After drawing out your initial pose, you can later add perspective for shortening and weapons in the mix to give it a professional look. Okay, to draw out the power pose, as any other pose, you always need to make sure that your character's body is in balance. So the middle of your character's body, no matter what their pose is a straight line, at least for the beginner poses. So this video is specifically made for beginners and intermediates, and the more advanced stuff like foreshortening will be explained later in different videos. So for now we're doing the basic beginner poses. So as I said, this pose in particular needs to have 6 heads, and this body is 6 heads tall. So we draw out the body by using the height of 6 heads. And of course you can see that her shoulders and her hips are tilted the opposite way. So at the marks where the hips and shoulders should be, we should already make these lines. And then we should proceed to shape the body as the lesson about shaping and proportions has taught us. And now, when we have the base for the body, some sort of like a bathing suit shape, I'm trying to make these characters as genderless as possible so that the people that draw females and males don't feel left out. So the first thing, you will see that the legs don't stand next to each other. They are more wide apart, and that's because this leg here is mostly straightforward and this leg here has a bent shape. So one of the legs is straight, one of the legs has a bending in the knee. And of course you need to pay attention how many heads is in this body, as we learned, because proportions are already included in this lesson, and I won't be explaining this part because you already got the lessons about that. So I'm skipping forward straight to the shaping of the body into a battle pose. So what's important for a battle pose is to make wide spread legs, but always make sure to keep the entire body in balance, to keep this straight line going through the middle of the pose. Otherwise your body will be falling down. It will look way out of balance, and it will be looking like it's floating awkwardly or just standing there about to fall down. So make sure you have this line always in the middle, in the center of your pose. Of course, always make sure to watch out for the heels of your character's feet, because the heels are the base for your poses. And of course, make sure to mark out where the edge of the floor is, so that you don't make your character's feet inside of the floor or just looking unnatural. And when we're done with the feet and the legs, now we need to check out the hands. When we normally draw hands, they are looking like this. But these hands in particular are foreshortened. And that's when we skip drawing the most of the hands and focus on the parts that we can only see with our bare, like when we look at this pose. So what do we see? We don't see these parts of the hands. We only see the big fists, and that's what we draw first. So you focus on where the fists should be, like two squares. One of them is bigger, one of them is smaller, because one of the fists is closer to us and one of the fists is further away. And for now, we don't do anything more detailed than this. Then what we know that's not very under the influence of foreshortening, it's the area between the shoulder and the elbow. So we move the elbow on the side and shorten that bone just a little bit. And then we connect the huge fist and the rest of the hand. I know this looks confusing for everybody who's a beginner, but foreshortening really can't be measured, it can't be predicted. It's very free range drawing, and the best way to master foreshortening is by observing references. You can check out reference photos from different magazines, take photos of your friends who are in battle poses, check out 3D models online I linked to you, or just check out any other form of 3D models in different poses, and you will see that foreshortening makes everything look more alive, more 3D, but it's also confusing, and you just can't control the amount of size, for example, size of this fist. I know that in some cases in manga, people are drawing fists way bigger, way more huge to emphasize the incoming hit. So try to emulate that, but also try not to get yaoi hands. It's a bit of a joke when the hands of the character are just way too big. So foreshortening is fun because you don't have any rules regarding it. You can just make the foot bigger if it's like closer to your face or the face of the intended opponent, and just play with it, test it out, see if it's for you, and just try not to make it too big, and also always use reference photos. Okay, so let's go to another pose. For the more distinguished pose for a cooler character, whether it's male or female, the base of your character should always be, well, of course, there should be the straight line that's preventing your character from falling over. And then you should split your character into 6 heads just to make sure that everything is in place. And the base for this particular pose is actually in symmetry. You should start by drawing out a symmetrical character, just drawing it like you would draw any kind of a standing body with their feet spread, well, their legs wide apart. And then you should slowly start implementing the counter pose. So what I did is I just added the counter pose like this and got the hip to be a little bit on this side. so that we get a more alive pose, but still have a very basic and very symmetrical pose in the entire character, because usually the characters that represent power and discipline and strength of mind are actually represented standing in a symmetrical pose with their hands crossed, or just with their arm showing at us, like Uncle Sam and stuff like that. So you can definitely play a bit, but also remember, counter pose makes everything way more exciting. You can switch this pose a bit around if you like. You can put one foot away and one foot facing us. You can make this arm completely normal, just use the size of the head for this part of the arm, then add one more head for this part of the arm, and add the hand. Also, if you want to spice this pose a bit, you could do what I did on this example. We will draw both examples here. And you can draw a normal hand with a fist. But if you want to make this look a bit more edgy or professional, or add some depth, then you can add a enlarged hand facing towards the observer, like Uncle Sam Wants You poster, or just with a hand that's showing towards us. And when you connect this to the armpit and just show a little bit of a hinted elbow, this is all you need to make a summoning pose. For example, like in Yu-Gi-Oh, when Yugi is summoning monsters or showing off his power. This is one of the poses of power. You can show off the elbow a bit, and this way you have one part of the body that's closer and one part of the body that's away from your eye, and that way you are emulating depth. You're emulating a character that looks like he's 3D, that he's standing there in the room with you. So this is just a basic sketch. Let's try the next pose. So this is a jumping pose, and as you can see, I deliberately made the entire length of the body in this line showing, because that's where I start from always. So as I said in the two previous examples, you always need a straight line to start off your body. Then you need to divide it into heads. And when you divide it into heads, we start shaping the pose. Of course, there's counter pose right here. And then we shape the body around the counter pose. So we have the neck, we have the shoulders, we have the torso, and we just scatter the legs and arms around so that they look like a seemingly realistic pose. For poses you think of like by heart, don't expect them to look too realistic, because they're usually just for practice, and it's always good to just test out something on your paper and see what kind of crazy poses and stories and characters you can get out of it. So you don't always need to start off with only references, but when you do something more serious, references are always the best way to go. Okay, so the length of the thigh bone in this particular pose is quite normal. It's just thrown a bit to the right. For this leg, it's thrown a bit to the left. They're the same size, the same length. But look at what happens with the areas under the knees. This leg is almost like a little angle, just a tiny little weird looking shape. And this leg here is actually of normal proportions, just tilted to the side, with the foot showing in the air. He almost looks like a ballerina. And about this, so this is also foreshortening. When we push the rest of his other leg behind him, this particular bone from his knees to his ankles gets shortened. That's why it's called foreshortening, because it's behind the character and it all looks just like a funny little shape. Foreshortening is creating weird shapes out of the body. When you watch your favorite anime or your favorite manga, you will see that the artists use foreshortening for action shots, and it's okay if it looks weird. You will practice, you will learn to make it look cool, add additional effects, and just go with it. For now, I'm just using the basic shapes for hands and arms, nothing special. We will learn more about arms and feet in other videos, or you can just consult my books if you already purchased them and check out the base for the hands and arms. Also, the same rule applies for the hands and feet. References, reference photos, always use reference photos. So, as for the foreshortening for this character, we barely did any. We did some on this leg and maybe some just on this part of his arm, but nothing special. So we deformed the proportions we learned before this time to allow our character to look more alive. You can always play with this pose by making this fist here bigger, or this fist bigger, and just test it out, test out different variations and options and play with it. Then after this, you just add some clothing and your character's facial expressions, and you will have a drawing that looks like a professional manga art piece. If you like this lesson, you can find way more in my manga book, Manga Crash Course, available in French, English, and Serbian languages in all of your local bookstores worldwide and Amazon.com, as well as all the links down below. If you want to check out more videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button on this video. Thank you guys so much, and see you guys next time.